Welcome to How Do They Afford That, the podcast that peeks into the financial lives of everyday Australians. I'm Michael Thompson. I'm a writer and the co-host of the podcast Fear and Greed Business News. As always, I'm with Canna Campbell, financial planner, founder of Sugar Mama TV, the financial literacy platform on YouTube, podcasts, books, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, and more. Canna, how are you going?
I'm well, thank you. How are you?
I'm going well, thank you. And we're going to jump straight into today's topic because it is a meaty one. It is a really serious topic, and it kind of follows on from the episode that we did a few weeks back now, actually, on financial abuse. If you haven't heard that one, I would certainly recommend going back and having a listen because it's really quite confronting. Basically, hearing those red flags for financial abuse, like controlling access to money and making someone kind of feel stupid because of their lack of knowledge, and so many different ways that financial abuse can kind of manifest in a relationship, for instance. Things that you might not have realized are in fact abuse. And so it is confronting. Go back and have a listen to that one if you can. But today we're going to delve into another very delicate, very personal topic. And it came about because we received this message from a listener who we won't obviously identify. They said, loved your episode about money when a relationship ends, and you touched on it at the end, but are you able to do an episode on gambling within a relationship? This person said, I have recently split finances with my partner due to his spending, particularly with online gaming. Are you able to shed some light on this about how to manage this, especially when you have joint bills and responsibilities? It's very, very hard. They say, like you read that, you just go, this is tough. This is a truly awful set of circumstances for this listener. And I suppose the very first thing that you would want to emphasize to this listener is that she's not alone, because this is alarmingly common, isn't it?
I would receive on average at the moment probably one DM every 2 days from someone with a similar story to this saying, can you please do an episode on gambling and addictions and the red flags and the signs and what to do and where to get help. So this person is most definitely not alone. And I myself have not only seen this firsthand, but I have also seen it from a very personal, intimate point of view in my life when I was younger.
Wow. Okay. Well, there's a lot for us to get into here. I suppose the red flags might be a good place to start in terms of what kind of problem gambling is, what a gambling addiction might look like in a relationship. And typically it might be a partner who sees it first.
Well, look, the first thing I want to point out is gambling addictions, I think, is one of the most frightening addictions because it is not evident in someone's physical appearance. So if you think about alcoholics or drug addicts, we can immediately see it, we can smell it, we can suspect it, we can even catch them. Gambling can be for some people a bit of a dirty secret that's easy to hide. And for many people, and this is the heartbreaking part of gamblers and the addiction behind it, is sometimes it's not until it's hit absolute crisis point where things have completely spiraled out of control that is actually the problem is uncovered. And that's when houses are being, repossessed or furniture is being taken, or we've got debt collectors knocking at the door. You're getting, lots of emails and mail with unpaid bills. That is quite often when people discover that their partner or a family member or a child has a gambling problem because it's not physically apparent in everyday life necessarily.
So in that case, is it kind of keeping an eye out for that kind of behavior then? Because if there's no physical kind of signs, it would just be, if you were wondering whether it might be your partner, it might be kind of money is disappearing.
There are some red flags definitely to look out for. So borrowing money to pay for gambling, using money that is earmarked for something essential like food to go gamble, or if someone is openly gambling and say they'd spend, say, $10 a week on the pokies, all of a sudden it's now $20, $30, $40, $50 a week on the pokies, that's a red flag. Catching people lying about money, stealing, fraud, like forging signatures. Another big one is, and I have to say this, I'm going to talk about something very, very intimate in a second, mood swings.
Right.
And my son, Rocco, he's 10 and a half, and I get really worried now seeing the gaming going on. And I've been talking to lots of parents recently, and we all seem to be sharing a very common theme where there's these kids are addicted to these games, and some of these games actually you have to pay for. And I got caught in this myself when my son was innocently saying, look, I need money to unlock this part of the game. But actually, that money was being stolen in the game. And so he had these massive mood swings. So I've had to quickly shut that down and get on top of that. So mood swings is a big one. And coming from personal experience, when I was around someone who had a gambling problem, they were fixated on winning. And when they won money, they were so happy and, euphorically high. And when they were losing money, they were sort of almost spiraling out of control with no emotional regulation, and all they could think about was the loss. And when they won, they just seemed to forget about all the money they'd previously lost. It was very disturbing to watch. Also, when you see people missing out on events to go gamble, for example, someone doesn't turn up to a family dinner because they're at the pub playing the pokies, or they're at the casino, or they're sitting in their bedroom playing online. And that's why I talk about, gambling isn't necessarily just the casino or the pokies. There's so much gaming and gambling. And I almost put gaming and gambling together sometimes, where it becomes completely addictive to the point where children are having to go through rehab to actually, wash themselves of these addictions.
How bad can it get? And I imagine that you would have seen professionally some horror stories as well from dealing with clients as well. And by the sounds of it, you've also had some personal experience in this space as well. But how bad can it get financially?
I actually feel sick to my stomach right now sharing this, but I have seen marriages just destroyed. I have seen people left in the position of bankruptcy where they've had to leave the country. I have seen homes having to be sold, children being pulled out of private school education. I've seen people's inheritances completely destroyed, complete trust, absolutely never to be repaired ever again. It is absolutely heartbreaking what this can do to people, to their mental well-being, and to the stability of a family. Completely destroyed.
And I was reading some statistics about problem gambling and the suicide rate as well among people who are affected by this addiction, and which is just so horrific and so confronting. And of course, it's important to remind everyone that there is always someone to talk to, and that Lifeline is a great resource that's there, 13 11 14 as well. But it just goes to illustrate that it spirals, doesn't it? It kind of starts probably in a place where it feels like it's under control, and it just gets worse and worse and worse, and it just can drag in everyone around you in terms of your family, and destroy relationships and destroy any kind of financial stability that you have had.
And anyone who is truly addicted to something, they can become a mastermind at hiding it. Because they're so protective of their addiction, they'll do anything to not let anyone take that addiction away from them. And this is when you see some really disturbing behaviours. Okay.
It's kind of hard to go from there to, all right, what do we do? But
what do we do?
What do we do?
What must we do?
Yeah, is the first step, as it seems to be in a lot of situations, the first step is communication of some kind. Is the first step a conversation with the affected person?
Absolutely. Coming from a place of kindness and compassion, really listening in and sharing your perspective on this, and talking about including a professional that can also help this person heal, because gambling addicts can be healed, but they need a lot of support, and they need a lot of long-term support. Removing temptation, taking proactive measures to keep that person safe, to keep that person on the right track. It's not something that's a quick fix, drop someone off to a hospital or a clinic. It's going to take long-term work, and this awareness and this continuous therapy even, or support, so that you can actually come out the other side of this and avoid this old toxic habits, I guess, creeping back in their lives, particularly if it's a particular trigger therapy for someone. It's their go-to when something happens. So there's a lot of work involved, but it is definitely worth doing. And the quicker you can get onto it, the better. But, people with these types of addictions need to have all temptation removed.
Okay. That is probably easier said than done in many cases, isn't it? And it's probably more than one person can do to help them.
And that's why having a support network around you,
Okay.
Whether it be a form of A&A for gamblers, whether it be a regular counsellor, whether it be, a group of people that have gone through, gambling addiction themselves and then can offer support to other people. Well, sometimes it actually involves actually just saying, you know what, I have a gambling problem. Can you please take away the access to all the things around me and, help me find maybe an activity or some sort of new hobby that can actually help replace this habit of mine.
Yeah.
Jordan Peterson has done a really good podcast about addictions. And I'm obviously stepping out of my lane here because I'm not a psychologist at all and I have, not much experience in this area from a professional point of view. But he said if you can find something that is more addictive than the actual addiction, that is the easiest and fastest way to kind of heal and move on away from that addiction. So say you're addicted to sugar. You find something else that actually fills your cup in a better, more fulfilling, sustainable way than that sugar or that alcohol or that drug.
Yeah. In preparing for this episode, I was reading about some of the things that you should and shouldn't do to help someone. And one of the things I thought was really interesting that you shouldn't do to help someone is basically help them get out of debt.
Yeah.
Which I mean, it goes against the grain because you want to help someone. And if you go, okay, well, you're in debt, I'll try and help you if I can. But it went to great lengths to point out that if you do that, you might potentially just enable their gambling and that in some cases they actually need to own that debt themselves rather than just pass it on to you and then they can kind of carry on with that behavior.
That's part of their journey and that's their awakening. And I guess the start of acknowledging something's wrong here and needs to be fixed. And I'm going to put my hand up. I've helped someone out that had an addiction by paying off their debts. And I know at the time it came from a good place. I was trying to help that person. And lo and behold, it turned out when it all became exposed, I wasn't the only person who was helping. All these other people around this particular person were also helping pay their debts, but we just didn't know about it. So we were making the situation worse. So we had to all agree together to stop all support, all financial support in this person because it was only feeding the problem and making it worse. And the longer this goes on, the longer it's going to take to heal.
Yeah.
And that's why I say it's so important to get onto it quickly.
Yeah.
That awareness is essential. The moment your intuition picks up, hang on, something's not right, something's going on here.
Yeah.
99% of the time you're right. And that's why having those conversations, but also common sense and eyes wide open, guys, like look for those signs.
Look for the money disappearing. Look for somebody not turning up where they were going to, or look for kind of anything that is kind of erratic behavior that is not the person that you know. And
out of character, antisocial, aggression is another sign of, gambling as well.
And so then that's one of the triggers then for having this conversation, having a conversation with them, but also making sure that you have that support network around that's going to be able to provide assistance because it's a lot for one person to do on their own. And as you say, that you might not be the only person who has been affected by this. And that might be helping them or trying to help. And if you can kind of unite with some of the people, whether it's other family members or whether it's other friends or neighbours or anyone kind of who might be involved or colleagues as well, that the more people involved in helping probably increases the likelihood of success.
Absolutely. And of course, everyone's got so many things on their plate. When you've got a team of people, it means that while someone's juggling additional distraction in their life, you've got, 3 other family members or 3 other friends keeping a close eye over that person.
Yeah.
So you're sharing the load and, common sense, sharing the load is obviously going to make everyone, a lot more effective in supporting this person through the other side, which can happen.
We'll take a quick break in a sec. And then when we come back, I want to talk about what happens if someone has had their finances affected by a partner's gambling addiction and what steps that they can take to protect themselves and to try and kind of restore their own position and confidence. But just before we leave the kind of how you help that person in particular, I imagine there's external resources and support that is available because it would also feel like if you've never done this before, how do you do it? And if you've only got kind of TV and movies as your example as to how to do it, it probably isn't the best instance. You only kind of have these images of kind of interventions that are held on kind of, I don't know, Grey's Anatomy or something like that. And it's probably not going to be the best kind of role model. There's other resources out there.
Yes, and reaching out to professionals who have results and have a track record, consistent track record of identifying the problem, honing in on the actual issue, what's particular to trigger for that person, and then building that proactive, ecosystem for that person so that the likelihood of them slipping back again is reduced to the best of their ability.
Yeah, and I suppose a good kind of starting place as well would just be to jump onto Google. And if you go to a website like gamblinghelponline.org.au that has a lot of resources and kind of has access to counselling and assistance and support as well, then you're not doing it alone.
Absolutely. And as I said, on average, I get 2 DMs per week from someone asking for this topic.
That is just terrible. Look, we'll come back in a sec and get into some of those strategies as to what you can do if you have been affected by a loved one that has been caught up in a gambling addiction. Back in a moment. Kanna, we're talking about problem gambling, a very serious topic today, and we've gone through in some detail the red flags, things to look out for, and ways that you might be able to help someone who does have a gambling addiction. But we started with an email or a message from a listener who said that they had recently split finances with their partner due to his spending, particularly with online gaming, and how to manage this. They needed some help, basically, how to manage this, especially when there's joint bills and joint responsibilities, because they were finding that situation really, really hard. What do you do in that situation? Kind of where is the first step to try and, because as you said, one of the warning signs might actually be money just kind of disappearing, money just going where you thought it was supposed to be and the account is empty. How do you protect yourself?
Well, the first place is you. Prioritize and protect you. So start checking your mail. Make sure you get to the mailbox before anyone else does in case bills are being hidden. Remove credit cards. Really important. Look at separate accounts so that you have some money set aside for you. If you have a joint superannuation account through a self-managed super fund, perhaps it's time to explore looking at another superannuation account. Of course, you've got to go get advice around that, but one of the heartbreaking stories as I've seen is the superannuation money being blown and no legal repercussions because of that. Super completely wiped. Definitely do not lend any money, which we've previously touched on, and do not pay any of that debt. Start hiding valuables, things that can be, taken down to the local cash converters. And most importantly, do a credit check on a regular basis so that you can see that nothing is being signed without your consent or awareness.
Yeah.
And that who your partner, for example, that might be gambling or potentially have a problem cannot go and damage your credit score, because one of the other situations that I've come across is where someone has had their credit score damaged for many, many years because of a gambling addiction. And that has, even though they're no longer with that person, it has made life so much harder financially for them to actually obtain finance because of the damage inflicted from this addiction.
And checking your credit report and your credit history and your credit kind of status is easy, isn't it? You can just do it online.
Takes a couple of minutes. And everyone should do this anyway, especially also for identity theft as well. Really important. But this helps you really stay on top of things. And it means the alarm bells will be ringing very quickly if there's a problem. And even things like changing PIN numbers and passwords to internet banking if you need to. And you can even speak to your bank. If there's a serious problem, speak to the bank and see what they can do, because they may be able to block cards or put restrictions on it or limits.
I was going to ask you about this.
Stay safe.
What about then if you do have a mortgage? If you've got a mortgage with someone else and it is in both of your names, is one of those steps to make a call to the bank just to make them aware, at the very least, of the situation, and they may be able to help you in some way?
Absolutely. See what they can do. And it's obviously going to depend on the way that your accounts are set up and the structure and the ownership and so forth. So you need to speak to the bank. But then also, if you need to, go get legal advice as well. Because as I said, things can spiral out of control, and the quicker you get onto this, the better.
And one really important element of this as well is to make sure that you are safe.
Yes.
Within it, because and this is where it really kind of does cross over with that financial abuse and into kind of domestic violence and family violence situation where we've spoken before, that as soon as you're getting into this position of kind of having separate bank accounts and trying to kind of hide away some money and having to change PIN numbers and things, there's risk there of a situation escalating, isn't there? And you need to really prioritize your own safety through
Absolutely.
all of this.
And that's why I said, prioritize you, protect you, and also protect your children if there are children involved, because I've also seen gambling parents destroy children's savings to the point where they'll even go into their, their pocket money and their piggy banks and their, little change boxes in their bedroom to go and gamble. It really is, it goes deep, it's incredibly toxic, and the damage is at times irreparable. Trust is completely broken, and so is respect.
All right. There is a lot in all of that. There is a lot there, and this is not going to apply to everyone, and hopefully it'll apply to very few people. But I mean, for those who this is relevant to, hopefully there is something in here that is actually going to help, because we've gone through some of those red flags to keep an eye out for in terms of the erratic behaviour, the changes there, and the money disappearing or just not being where it is supposed to be, and suddenly other loans are kind of popping up, or loans that you might not have been aware of are present as well. And that when those red flags come up, the first step is a conversation. Communication is absolutely key throughout this, but not just between you and that affected person, but also the other loved ones that might be involved and might be affected by their behavior and might be able to help in removing temptation and setting up a framework and a structure that will allow them hopefully to get better, but not to do it alone as well, to reach out and get professional help, whether that is from a counsellor or other resources, and to jump online and see what some of those resources are, because there's plenty of options out there for you. If you are one of those people who's been affected by it, that you need to also prioritise yourself. You need to put your finances and your safety first, as well, and that there are those strategies to try and kind of quarantine your money in order to avoid your own kind of financial future getting sucked down basically by this behavior. So things like kind of getting to the mail first, checking those bills, being aware of kind of what money is going out, what money is coming in, and kind of where it's supposed to be. And then looking at kind of, do you have separate accounts? Do you need a separate account? Do you need to have some money kind of put aside, a separate superannuation account if it gets to that point? Checking your credit rating, checking your credit score, and not paying debts for somebody else, because they do need to own that, and there is a chance that you might essentially enable their behaviour by clearing those debts. They are almost free to continue the way they were going. It's a very, very confronting kind of situation, isn't it?
It is. And I would like to say to anyone that has just recently left a relationship that included or involved a gambling addiction, and that is obviously to lean on financial counsellors.
Yeah.
And then when the timing is appropriate, go see a financial planner, so that you can focus on rebuilding your life and, I guess, undoing maybe the damage that that other person did. Because when you get quality, independent financial advice from a licensed financial planner, they can show you what you can do to help you work on your own financial goals, your own financial stability and independence, and work with what you might have and build on from there and make up for that lost time. So it is not all lost. There are lots of different things you can do. And it is a long journey, not just for the person with the addiction, but for everyone around that person that has been impacted, hurt, damaged, and just really had their well-being, their mental well-being rattled by such a toxic, heartbreaking addiction of gambling.
Well said. All right. Well, look, I think let's finish on something uplifting, a savings hack, a bit of a change of pace, just to finish on a positive note. I have one. May I share it with you?
Please disclose the source, because I have a feeling you did not come up with this organically.
I rarely do. And because obviously previously I've put the call out to listeners to help me out here. I'm in a constant battle every week with Canna over our savings hacks. And Canna has just this steady stream of savings tips and hints and hacks coming into her Instagram. And I said, go to my Instagram. Don't worry about Canna. Don't worry about Sugar Mama TV. Go to Michael Thompson Author instead on Instagram and send them to me. Just help out the underdog in the studio. And you know what? It's happening. It is happening. And it's just so nice to see.
You are open to the flow of saving hacks.
I actually am.
You're manifesting saving hacks.
I put it out there into the universe. I said, please send them to me. I will gratefully receive them. And Ben has done so. He says, hi, Michael. And so, he's even kind of fully kind of taken on board the fact that this is a competition. He says, hi, Michael, a money hack that I think is worth taking on Canna with, which I just love.
Ooh, Ben, bring it on.
Yeah, is buying gift cards at Costco because they will often sell them for 10 to 30% off. So, for instance, he buys KO Sports, as in the TV subscription, to watch sport. He goes, $100 cards, buy it for $85 and load that onto your account. And he goes, they're not always there, that the cards are often different as to what's being offered. But he says, I've seen hotel chains, Binge, another streaming service, kind of Google Play and other kind of things as well, that it might be 25% off, it might be 20% off, it might be kind of 30% off, that the discounts do vary. But all of a sudden, you can actually get something that has a higher value for substantially less. And he says it is a great savings hack. And I agree. In fact, I think it is the best savings hack I've had in, well, this week at the very least.
I have to say, wow, Ben, thank you for sharing that. That is amazing. That's so good to know.
Even if you have to say it through gritted teeth because he said it to me and not to you.
Thanks, Ben. I'm coming for you.
It's very, very satisfying. This is good. All right. Now, Canna, if anyone does want to get in touch with you, obviously not to send you information, that comes to me instead. But if they do want to reach you, Instagram's the best way?
Instagram's the best place. And as I said, I have seen it firsthand, gambling addiction, and I've had it personally touch my life. So please feel free, if you are feeling vulnerable and need to have a quick conversation with me, you can reach out to me. I am there for everyone and anyone at any time.
All right. And you can hear me every day with Sean Aylmer on Fear and Greed, Australia's best business podcast. Thank you for listening to How Do They Afford That? Remember, please to hit follow on the podcast. Please leave us a review. Please leave us a rating as well. It is all very much appreciated. Next week, we are going to talk about another listener question. And this time it's about parental leave, which I think is a fascinating topic. And we haven't really talked about it. What happens when two incomes suddenly goes down to one for a certain period of time, and how to manage this. It is a really interesting topic. We'll get into next week. Don't miss it.